April 28, 1988. A Boeing 737 is cruising at 24,000 feet over the Pacific. And then, in 1 second, the entire roof of the first-class cabin is gone. Not a window, not a door. 18 feet of the aeroplane, just gone. 89 passengers are now flying in a convertible, 5 miles above the ocean. Nobody saw it coming. But here's the thing. The aeroplane had been trying to warn everyone for years. And one passenger, boarding that morning, actually saw the warning and said nothing. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what she saw and why this flight changed every aeroplane you've ever flown on. Flight 243 was the definition of routine. Aloha Airlines flew the Hawaiian Islands like a bus line, Hilo to Honolulu, 35 minutes, a dozen times a day. The aircraft was a 737 named Queen Liliuokalani, and the crew? Captain Robert Schornsteimer, 8,000 hours. First Officer Mimi Tompkins, one of the most experienced pilots at the airline. In the cabin, 3 flight attendants. One of them, C.B. Lansing, had been flying these islands for 37 years. But Queen Liliuokalani had a secret. She was 19 years old, and she had flown more flights than almost any 737 on Earth. 89,680 takeoffs and landings. And here's the detail that matters. Every single flight, the cabin inflates like a balloon and deflates. 89,000 times, this aluminum skin had been stretched and released. Metal doesn't break the way you think. Take a paperclip. Bend it once, nothing. Bend it 50 times, it snaps in your fingers. That's fatigue. No warning, no drama, just microscopic cracks growing invisibly with every single bend. Now make the paperclip an aeroplane, and make every flight a bend. And this particular 737 had a flaw baked in at the factory. Its fuselage panels were joined with a cold bond adhesive, glue, backed by 3 rows of rivets. On humid, salty islands like Hawaii, moisture crept into that glue and corrosion began prying the panels apart, which meant the rivets, never designed to carry the load alone, were now holding the aeroplane together by themselves. Which brings us back to the boarding door. That morning, a passenger named Gail Yamamoto noticed something as she stepped aboard. A crack in the fuselage right beside the door. A real, visible crack. She assumed someone must already know. She took her seat. She said nothing. The NTSB would later put her observation in the official report, because that crack was the accident, announcing itself 90 minutes early.
1:46 p.m., 24,000 feet. First Officer Tompkins is flying. And then a whoosh, and the captain looks back and sees the sky. The first-class ceiling is gone. The cockpit door has been ripped away. The wind is 600 kilometers an hour of noise. The clock starts now. 13 minutes to get 95 people onto the ground. C.B. Lansing was standing at row 5, collecting cups. She was 58 years old. 37 years of takeoffs, 37 years of island hops. When the fuselage opened, she was gone before anyone could reach for her. The passengers in row 5 saw the floor, the sky, and an empty aisle. She is the only person Flight 243 lost, and she was never found. In the cockpit, the problem list is growing by the second. The plane is shaking so violently, the captain can't read the instruments. The wind is so loud, the pilots can't hear each other or air traffic control. And a third of the airplane's structure is missing, which means one wrong move, one hard turn, and the rest of the fuselage could fold. In the cabin, flight attendant Michelle Honda had been thrown to the floor. So she stayed there and crawled, row by row, up and down that open-air aisle, shouting over the wind, checking seatbelts, holding hands, telling 90 strangers they were going to make it. Passengers later said the bravest thing they ever saw was a woman crawling. The pilots do everything at once. Emergency descent, but gently because speed is tearing the airplane apart. They aim for Maui, the nearest runway. Tompkins runs the radio blind, transmitting into a hurricane, not knowing if anyone hears her. Air traffic control catches fragments, enough to scramble every fire truck on the island. Final approach. The nose gear light says the landing gear isn't locked. The flaps are misbehaving, so they're landing fast. And when the captain pulls the throttle, engine 1 doesn't answer. It's flaming out. An airplane missing its roof, landing fast on one engine with gear they can't confirm, and nowhere else to go. 1:58 p.m. 13 minutes after the sky came in, Queen Liliuokalani touches down at Kahului. The gear holds. The airframe holds. And when the airplane finally stops, the cabin does something no checklist covers. 89 passengers start to applaud.
The NTSB took one look at the wreck and rewrote Aviation. The skin had failed exactly where the science said it would. The lap joints. The glue had let go years earlier. The rivets had been carrying everything, cracking microscopically at hole after hole. A phenomenon investigators named multiple site damage. Dozens of tiny cracks, each one harmless, quietly linking up into one 18-foot zipper. And the cycle counter explains why it was this airplane. Remember, island hops, 35-minute flights. Where a mainland 737 might fly 4 cycles a day, Alohas flew a dozen. Queen Liliuokalani was only 19 years old, but in balloon inflations, she was the second oldest 737 on the planet. Age isn't years. Age is cycles. Which brings us, one last time, to the boarding door. The crack Gail Yamamoto saw was real. The fatigue had already reached the surface. If she had said one sentence to one crew member, maybe. But here's the uncomfortable truth the investigators admitted. Under the inspection rules of 1988, that airplane was legal to fly that morning. The system didn't fail to see the crack. The system wasn't looking. Flight 243 is why your airplane is inspected the way it is. It created the Aging Aircraft Program, mandatory structural teardowns, rivet line inspections, retirement rules based on cycles, not years. Engineers call the disaster the Aloha effect. Every boring, uneventful flight you've ever taken, some of that boredom was bought on April 28, 1988. At Honolulu Airport, there's a plaque for C.B. Lansing, 58 years old, 37 of them in the air over these islands. The ocean she flew over her whole career is the ocean that keeps her. 95 people met the sky that day. 94 came home. Because 2 pilots refused to panic and 1 flight attendant crawled. If a crack that small can open a roof that big, imagine how many quiet failures are sitting in a maintenance log somewhere right now, waiting to be caught. Subscribe if you want more stories where the machine is the mystery. And tell me in the comments, would you have reported the crack, honestly?